Okay, thank you. Let me go over this again. So what we're gonna learn is tips on to launch a new lease listing, steps to take when working with a tenant, representation agreements, applications, reports, and supporting documents. Along with that, at the end, we're gonna also talk about the websites that you're going to access these documents from, and then strategies to make your applicant more appealing. Okay, so why work with the lease? It builds confidence. When you're new to the industry, it's a little overwhelming dealing with the sale, listing, or purchase, working with buyers and sellers. There's a lot of money involved, and sometimes a seller might not have that confidence or trust in you because you're a new agent to sell their home, or a buyer might not have that confidence or trust in you to help them find a home and represent them and negotiate on their behalf. So this helps build confidence because it helps you learn how to talk to clients, to buyers, to sellers, to tenants, landlords, how to reach out to other agents. I think I have other things here. It gives you experience in communicating with other agents, right? Scheduling showings, showing properties, opening lock boxes. I always try to stress that because it's one of those things. Working with Zipforms and digital signatures, and submitting offers, in this case, applications. So the first bullet point, communicating with other agents. You need to know what to ask, right? When you're calling other agents, asking them, just questions about the property. Hey, do you accept Section 8? Which they can't say no. I don't know why people ask, you just submit it. You can ask, are they willing to accept pets? Right, so you have to call them to ask these questions. When do they want the tenants to move in by? Right, or when's the home gonna be ready? Or, different questions you might have. But you have to build that confidence to be able to talk to other agents. It's, for some people, they have a hard time talking to somebody they don't know on the phone, especially with an agent that has been doing it for years and you're brand new. You're like, oh, what do I say? Just ask your question. Same thing, you come into the office and ask me or ask anybody. Just ask. Scheduling showings, depending on what the showing instructions are in the MLS. It has showing instructions that says go direct or schedule using showing time, or contact or schedule via the text with listing agent or whatever it is, or call listing agent to schedule an appointment. You got to be able to call and say, hi, Mr. and Mrs. Listing Agent. I have a client that's a tenant that's interested in your property. I'd like to show it on this day at this time. Does that work for you? Sure, yes, go ahead, show. Just remember, they're gonna tell you, remember to lock the door, turn off all the lights, so forth. And if you're representing the landlord, the same thing. The landlord might say, this is how I want you to handle it. I want you to make sure that you know who's coming and going. So as a listing agent, you're gonna be taking those calls. Working with showing properties. So it gives you experience in actually scheduling the showings and actually showing the properties to tenants, and opening the lock boxes. It's good experience for you because when you have a buyer and you're going to show them a bunch of properties, let's say you're going to show them 2 to 5 properties per day, you have to know what the process is. Opening the lock box, going in, maybe turning on the lights and making it, opening the blinds, making it more bright in there for them to actually see what it looks like, and walking through the house with them. Maybe going over some key features from the MLS about the property. Oh, look, these are brand new countertops. It says here that, they were installed last year, brand new cabinets and, so forth. You're going to go to the property. It helps you working with Zipforms and digital signatures. So there's going to be some disclosures that are going to have to be signed by the seller, by the landlord and the tenant, that if they prefer signing digitally, you can set them up within Zipforms, email them out for digital signatures. There's some people that might want to sign them in person. So you meet up with them, you print them out from Zipforms. You meet with them, have them sign, person scan them and then email them to the other agent. And it also gives you experience in submitting offers, in this case, applications, because you're working with tenants. And gathering all the documentation you need to create your package, your application package to send in. If it was a purchase, it would be your purchase agreement packet, which will include the purchase agreement. It would include your pre-approval proof of funds, But in this case, when submitting an application, it would be your application, the credit report. Most agents ask for, or landlords ask for, last 2 pay stubs, last 2 bank statements, and sometimes they ask for a driver's license. But in this case, you're also gonna be wanting to submit the lease rental commission agreement. If your tenant doesn't want to pay the commission or is asking, hey, let's ask the landlord to pay the commission. But in some cases, the tenant is willing to pay for it, so you don't have to sit on it. Any questions on any of this? So, pretty easy, right? It helps build confidence if you're a new agent. So now lease listing launch preparation and tasks. So pre-launch, this is before you go live. Research pricing in the area, right, before you go into a listing presentation, just like you would for a listing presentation. Agree to list price and security deposit. So in this case, it's not just a list price, it's a security deposit. And keep in mind that if the landlord is exempt from the Tenant Protection Act, then they can charge up to 2 months worth of security deposit. But if they're not exempt, then they can only collect 1 month security deposit. Discuss and agree to a commission amount. Discuss possibility of the tenant asking for the seller to pay. So right now, we're talking on the list side. You're representing the landlord. So let them know that, good morning, come on. Let them know that the tenant and their agent might ask the landlord to pay their commission. It's a possibility. Discuss what the landlord pays for and what the tenant pays for as far as utilities. Maybe the landlord pays for water and trash. Right, and then the tenant pays for everything else, or maybe the tenant's responsible for everything. Maybe the landlord's willing to pay for a gardener. In a lot of cases, that's the case. So make sure you understand all this, right? And then get the lease listing signed. This thing seems to always be in the way. Let's move that out of the way here. And this is what the lease listing agreement looks like. Just so you guys have an idea. They prepared the rental property owner's name. It's between them and Coldwell Banker Platinum Properties, the broker. For a listing period, it must have a beginning date and ending date. So under 1 to 3rd line, beginning date, ending date. And the beginning date is when it's going to go into the MLS, when it's going to be marketed. And then what number 2, what the rent amount's going to be, how much are you going to lease it for? Are you asking for 2B is the security deposit. We're not going to go through this whole thing, but just so you can see, and then letter C is typically it's 1 year. Items included or excluded from the lease, so forth. But I just want to show you guys what it looks like. And then the commission, number 3, letter B, for fixed term leases, either right here, you're going to check the box and it's going to say 3% of the total rent payments for, so it's typically for 1 year term. So what you're gonna, I'll show you guys what that looks like here. Commission is usually a percentage of the first year's total rent. Example, 3% commission. Let's say the rent is $4,000 a month. Times 12 months, that's $48,000. So you're gonna get 3% of $48,000. That's gonna be your commission. Oh, I didn't change that. 2.5%. So I guess I did the calculation based on 2.5%. So pretend that example is 2.5%. And then so 2.5% of 48,000 is $1,440. So that's what your commission will be based upon this, if you represent the landlord or tenant, and that's what the commission you're asking for. But right now we're talking about the landlord. So if on the lease listing agreement you enter 2.5%, that's what your commission would be based on that rental. Any questions? Does that make sense? All right. All right, let's move on. So pre-launch, order your sign, your for lease sign writer, open house signs, and go to rassforsigns.com. And again, like I mentioned during the listing class, order the sign. It's going to have the Coldwell Banker logo, your name, phone number, DRE number, and then you can order the for lease sign writer. It's a little sign that you attach to the top of it. You can purchase one that's for sale, one that's for lease, one that's in escrow. There's a bunch of different ones you can use. But for the lease, you can put that sign writer on top that says for lease. So people will see the sign and know that it's for lease. Because typically when a buyer drives by, they see a sign, they think it's for sale. So they're gonna stop by and thinking, you know, it's for sale if you have an open house. Make sure that it says Coldwell Banker Platted Properties, not Coldwell Banker Realty, not Coldwell Banker Residential, Coldwell Banker Platted Properties. So before you order it, they're gonna send you a proof. Email it to me to make sure that everything's correct on it, and then we'll approve it before you place the order, so that way you don't lose money. Schedule a photographer or take photos yourself. So typically for listings for sale, most agents are gonna hire a professional photographer. They're gonna pay a few $100s to get professional photos taken. For a lease listing, some agents will do the same thing, but others will just go out and take their own pictures. There's some agents, some pretty good cameras on these phones nowadays. And there's some people that take really good photos. So if you're one of those people, you don't want to spend the money, you can take really good pictures on your phone. It's a lease, right? Lease listing, go ahead and do it. If you can get the landlord to pay for the pictures, even better. I mean, that's not something that they normally do, but it's happened. So also pre-launch before you go live, install and activate the Supra eKey app on your phone. So for those of you that don't have the eKey app on your phone, you're gonna need that to open lockboxes to access the property. The subscription, I believe, is like $15 or $16 a month. And it's only for realtors. Purchase a lockbox from Orange County Realtors. You're gonna need to give people access, so you need a lockbox on the home. And not every listing is gonna allow you to put a lockbox on the home. They're gonna want you to be there for the showings, or maybe there's no showings, maybe there's just open houses. So in most cases, there's a lockbox. You install it, gives other agents access to the property. But again, there might be those rare occasions where they don't want a lockbox. Launch your lease listing. So now we're ready. Now we have everything ready, ready to go. So during the launch, you're gonna enter the listing into the MLS, but before you do that, you're gonna need to search the MLS for a previous listing of that property. Maybe it was listed with another agent for lease like a year ago, 2 years ago. So it's important to have that printout or reference, because you have to upload the listing into the MLS. And it asks you tons of questions. There's a bunch of form questions, features that you have to check mark. Does the property have this? Does it, what type of flooring does it have? What type of, I don't know, heating does it have? Cooling, all this stuff. And having that available is just such a big help. It'll make the process go so much faster. Also, search the MLS for properties in the same tract, because there might be some information that you need about the amenities for the neighborhood that weren't on that listing, original listing, but these other ones have it. So now you have information on the HOA. There's HOA pools, there's HOA trails, there's HOA parks, things like that. Let's see, submit the listing to the MLS. So now that you have this information, you're gonna submit this listing to the MLS. And I'll show you guys at the end what that looks like, where you have to go in the MLS to submit listing, to add the listing. You're also gonna add the lease listing to Zillow. But recently, we've just found out that it's adding the listings to Zillow automatically now. Before, this is what it used to do. If you had to upload a listing to the MLS, it would feed it over to Zillow. But something happened where they became a separate company and they weren't showing lease listings anymore. You had to upload them as an agent. But who knows why, and nobody told anybody, but now they're automatically going back on Zillow on their own, so you don't have to do that. But you as a listing agent can log into Zillow and manage that lease listing. So you're gonna get leads from Zillow. And the way you can communicate with those leads is if you have a Zillow account under Zillow Rental Manager, and I will show you what that looks like also. So when someone sends you a message, you can log into their website and respond to them, schedule showings. You can even accept applications through Zillow. I believe they have a screening process as well. And add the listing to SkySlope. SkySlope, again, is a transaction management system or website that allows you as the agent to share all of your forms for your transaction with us, the brokerage. So we have a copy of everything. We also provide a checklist in SkySlope that lets you know what forms are required for the transaction, what forms we need for you to get paid. If you don't provide all those forms, you don't get paid. It could be closed but you don't provide those forms, if for some reason I'll show you guys what that checklist looks like let me go through this here. Add a listing to rent spree. Rent spree is a third-party tenant screening service used by realtors, tenants, landlords. And I'll show you guys what this looks like at the end as well. But this website allows you as a realtor to send an email, email a link for an application and credit report to a potential tenant. The tenant then fills out the application, they pay $40 for their credit report to be run. And then once they complete that, it notifies you as the agent saying, hey, this person's application and credit report is complete, it's ready for you to download. Then you're going to present that. In this case, we're still talking about the listing side. You're going to present it to your landlord. Say, hey, here's an application. What do you think? Are they good enough? You know, it's going to have their credit report. It's going to have their application. It's going to have references, where they work, how much money they earn, all that. So lease listing checklist. So when you get a lease listing and you upload it to SkySlope, all that's really required is the lease listing agreement. So the second line on the checklist here. And when you log in, it's going to tell you what's required, and then it'll be a little grayed out if applicable. So if you see a little asterisk like this next to it, it means if applicable. So the seller instruction to exclude from MLS listing, I don't think we use that anymore. So we have to update this checklist because now that's included within the listing agreement. But I'm not sure if it's included on the lease listing agreement, so we might need it for a lease. I know it's included in the lease, in the regular listing agreement. And then disclosure regarding agency relationship, that's only if the property, if you're representing for more than a year lease. So it's not required, but it's if applicable. And then any other forms under miscellaneous that you end up having to sign. But at the beginning, this is all you need to upload, just the lease listing agreement packet. Then you're complying with what we're asking for. Let's see, listing launch task. So now that you uploaded and launched your listing, you're going to install the sign and the sign writer on the property. Install the lockbox that you purchased. And make sure you put a key in that lockbox. Don't just put the lockbox on, you need to put the key inside. Log into SuperWeb website to assign the listing to your lockbox. So you just did this, right? So when you purchase a lockbox, you have to go to the SuperWeb website, create an account with them, and then there's a serial number assigned to your lockbox that you're going to type into SuperWeb so it connects it. So through that website, you can control times that you're going to allow people to open the lockbox. You're going to add a listing address to that lockbox, because let's say you have 10 listings and you have lockboxes on all of them, and someone opens and shows a property, and you're like, whoa, which property did they just open? That's why it allows you to assign a property to that lockbox. So when someone opens that lockbox, they say, oh, 123 Main Street, this person just, opened the lockbox and is showing your property, your listing. So that's why it's important to log into SuperWeb and make that connection. It also keeps a track of all the showings and everything too. You can add, so it'll send you an email when someone shows a property, but you can add another person. So let's say you want the landlord or the seller to know every time somebody goes to the property, you can add their email address. So it also emails that every time somebody sees the property. You're going to make property flyers with photos. This is important because when someone comes to see the property, they're probably looking at 10, 20 other properties, right? And sometimes they forget which, like they really fell in love with your house, but they forget what the address is. What was the address of that house? I know it had the beautiful pool in the back and, it had brand new everything. God, what was the address? Well, if they take a flyer, they're going to remember that. So in Rent Spree, remember the website for applications and credit reports? They also provide a flyer for you. And the flyer looks like this. And what I like to do for my leases is I'll print out the regular flyer on one side and I'll print out the application flyer from Rent Spree. And what people can do is they can scan that QR code and instantly takes them to Rent Spree. to create their account and fill out the application on their phone. And, or if they don't want to scan it, they can go to this website right there, which is https://apply.link.3, and that link is specifically for my listing that I created in RentSpree. And then once someone applies, it notifies me that someone applied, and then I can submit their application. So this is pretty cool. Any questions on that? Okay. So now you also want to advertise the open house, maybe on social media, Facebook, Instagram. Add the open house date and time in the MLS listing for other agents to see it, but also so it shoots out to all the portals like Zillow, Redfin, realtor.com, colobanker.com, all the websites, right? Then you're going to host an open house. And for the open house, you can use the open house non-agency form or the tenant representation compensation agreement. And those two, the open house form is pretty much saying, like, if someone walks in, they tell you they have an agent, say, okay, can you sign in here and then write your agent's name? That way, there's no agency relationship between us. And that confirms that, right? That you signed it, we don't have a relationship. And then you can answer their questions, but only answer questions that are already on the flyer or posted on the MLS. And the tenant representation and broker compensation agreement, that's if they want you to represent them, you have them sign that, saying that they're working with you and that they agree to pay you a commission. Then you're going to conduct showings, right? So maybe after the open house, later on in the week, you get some calls. Hey, I'd like to see the property. A smart thing to do is to schedule like a day during the week. Say, okay, I'm going to show properties on Wednesday. Anyone that calls me. Otherwise, you're going to be driving to the property every time somebody calls you. And I learned this the hard way. I was so excited. I'm like, yeah, I got a call. Yeah, I'll meet you there at 3 o'clock. Cool. Show them the property, and then I come back. I get another call. Yeah, I can meet you there at 4 o'clock. Sure, yeah, okay. I learned my lesson, so I don't want you guys to learn the hard way. So what I started doing was, I'm going to be at the property on Wednesday at this time. Are you available? Otherwise, it'll have to be on Friday. So I give two options, right? And it's times that I'm available, and then you schedule, let's say 5 different people seeing the property. Guess what? Now they're like, oh, this is a hot property. There's a lot of competition. I want this house, right? This must be a really good house. But at the same time, you're going there once, you're letting everybody in the house and look around, and it shows acting, right? So it looks pretty cool. So I would recommend that you do that. You can do it however you want. You can go every hour and show the property if you want, but it's up to you. So now that, let's say you show the property, you've had open houses, you've had other agents show the property, any applications that you get, you have to submit them, present them to the landlord. Doesn't matter what they look like. I would make sure that you submit all complete applications. In the MLS, you're going to write down, submit all applications, including application, credit report, last 2 pay stubs, last 2 bank statements. That's a complete application packet. If someone submits an application without all that information, you're not obligated to submit that application because it's not a complete application packet. So you're going to present all of the completed application packets. So if someone later on says, hey, why didn't you submit, present my application? Well, you didn't give me a complete application packet. This is what I asked for in the MLS. This is what we're expecting. Or you can reply to that person when they submit the application. Please submit a complete application, including blah, 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 blah. These 4 or 5 things. And then I'll present it. So at least you have record of it. And they can't say discrimination. They can't say anything else. You did not submit a complete application. This is why I didn't present it.
I have a question, Carlos. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So, let's say someone submits an application and then they don't meet the criteria and they have like bankruptcy and these things, and then it's in the listing it says like must have XYZ to qualify. Should those applications also be submitted?
Have you seen, give me an example of a listing that you've seen that says something like that, like it says must have 800 credit or must have no bankruptcies, does it say that on the,
Well, it
uh,
wasn't necessarily on the MLS. So let's say it's a home for rent on Zillow or one of those marketing platforms, and it does say, must have, yeah, certain credit and no bankruptcies.
if they're represented by an agent, usually the agent will call and ask, and then you can let the agent know. Now, whether they submit or not, that's on them, but you already set the standard, right, on you, but you better make sure that whoever the landlord picks has that criteria, right?
Okay.
So
Okay.
if you say that we want people with over 800 credit that, make 3 times what the rent is, and you have all these criteria set, and then you accept someone that has 750 credit, then everybody else that didn't even get looked at, they have a case, right? Because they didn't meet the standard either.
Oh, that makes so much sense. Okay, so either all of them or
Yeah, I wouldn't set any criteria. I mean, I wouldn't set like a standard.
yeah, that makes sense. It was just what I saw online, but not through MLS, but more so like from some realtors on the marketing platforms of homes for rent. I did see certain criteria, but that's a good lesson for me that maybe I shouldn't learn from what they're doing. So
So
thank you.
there are some landlords though that say, I don't want anybody with under 750 credit and so forth, right? You don't have to enter that into the MLS. As agents call you and ask you, hey, what's, because agents are going to call you before they submit. They're going to want to feel out, hey, is my client even, should I even, are they candidate, right? They're going to call and say, hey, have clients, blah, blah, you can ask them then, hey, so what's their credit? The landlord's looking for this. You can discuss it with them. And right, and then if they have, their client doesn't meet the criteria, then they're probably not gonna submit the application, right? Another
Yeah.
thing is, if your listing is on Zillow and you get a bunch of inquiries on Zillow, they're gonna ask, usually they'll ask, hey, are they willing to accept a family with a dog? Or we have, it's 4 roommates, and they'll ask you right there and then, hey, will they accept this? And you can tell them like, hey, you can't discriminate, remember that. So there's certain things that you can't say. Um, Usually in some situations, I'll just say, please submit your application. I'll submit it, I'll present it, and every application will be looked at, right?
Yeah,
So,
that sounds great. Thank you so much. That makes so much sense.
yeah, and then you can even call those people that apply, with those questions. You can call them because their phone number is gonna be on there. You can call them and say, hey, so what's your situation? You can learn a little bit more about them. And then sometimes they might not be ideal for that situation, you know? And it might not be because they're not qualified for it. It could be something that, oh, hey, well, this, you said you need a house with a bedroom downstairs. This doesn't have a downstairs bedroom. They're all upstairs. And then you get that out of the way, right? So they're like, oh, okay, thank you, thank you for calling me back or whatever it is. Yes.
In one case, Carlos, when someone have this issue,
Mhm.
but they're gonna pay cash upfront. Sometimes, like,
Yeah.
if they have, it, they're gonna pay cash.
Yeah, and that's,
Yeah.
sometimes landlord is willing to accept it. Let's say they have
Yeah.
650 credit, but they can explain the circumstances behind why, what happened and all that, but they say, hey, we want to pay a whole year up front, cash. The landlord might just say, hey,
Yeah.
let's take it, right?
Right.
So that's why it's important not to set the standards up front, because an opportunity like this might come up.
Right. Yes. Thank you.
So now that you submitted all your applications and reviewed them with the landlord, they accept one, they accept an applicant. So then what happens next, you as a listing agent, you're gonna write up the lease agreement and the necessary forms to send out for signatures first, we're gonna send it out for the tenant to sign it. Once the tenant signs it, then we bring it back for our landlord to sign. So we're gonna write up the lease agreement, send it to the tenant's agent, if there's another agent involved, have their tenant sign it. Again, they're gonna send it back to us, then we have the landlord sign it. We want the tenant to sign first, because if the landlord signs first, and then the tenant goes out and is looking for another property, and they apply somewhere else and get accepted, And now they go with that one instead, and now the landlord just signed this agreement, and it's just like, what happened, right? They're not obligated. So we like to have the tenant sign first, so that way the tenant can accept it, and, you know, they've already accepted, and that's why we sent them the lease agreement, right? But you have them sign it to commit, landlord signs it, commits. It just avoids ugliness, and that happens a lot. I haven't seen it as much, where one applicant submits applications to like 10 different places, and just whichever one catches is the one we're gonna go with. So you're gonna ask for the security deposit and first month's rent. Keep in mind that a landlord cannot ask for 2 months rent up front, 3 months rent up front, 4 months rent up front, or 5 months up front. They can ask for 1 month up front and the deposit, or 6 months or more plus the deposit up front. I don't know why 6 months, but it can't be something, because there's some agents that'll say, hey, my client's willing to pay 3 months up front. Nope, can't do that. Can they pay 6 months up front? We can do that, but it's not permitted. So tenant landlord law, California, I'm not sure. Rich knows the details of all that. I'm just gonna explain that to you. It's just to tell you 1 month, 6 months or more. Any questions on that? Okay. You're gonna upload a fully executed, all of your fully executed forms, supporting documents to SkySlope. Again, SkySlope is our transaction management system that gives us, the brokerage, a copy of the transaction, all the files of the transaction. You're gonna deliver the keys. So typically what happens is, let's use mine for example. I have a lease listing right now where the tenant's not gonna move in until April 1st. So for now, we collected the security deposit. We're not gonna ask them for the first month's rent, a month, 2 months prior to their moving day, right? So, but we can collect the security deposit to hold the house for them. On April 1st, they're gonna give us the first month's rent, we give them the keys. So in this example, we're delivering the keys to them on their moving day. Sometimes if it's like a week or 2 weeks before the beginning of the lease agreement, let's say it's March 20th. And we signed all the documents, you can collect the first month and the security deposit at that time, and then give them the keys on moving day. You can do that. Get a copy of the move-in inspection form. So you want to make sure that you get this form. This is important for both. And something that I should have added to this that's changed is, I think beginning, I want to say next month or the next couple months, every listing agent must take a picture of all the rooms in the house or video before the move-in. That way it's documented, the condition of the property is documented. Before, all we had was a move-in inspection where the tenant went through the house and they wrote down any deficiencies. Hey, this was already like this when we moved in, so don't charge me for it when I move out, right? Now we have actual evidence, there's pictures. Oh, you said it was broken, where? Here's pictures of when you moved in, that window wasn't broken, right? And also, moving out, there should also be pictures taken on move out. But the move-in inspection form is still required where when the tenant moves in, they have to write any deficiencies or anything that they'd like fixed. And then it goes back to the landlord to sign to acknowledge it. And you keep that in the file. And if you're representing a tenant, this protects your tenant too, because for that particular reason. And what I like to do, even though they've already signed everything and they can download copies of it when they're signing it, I like to give the landlord a copy. I give them a hard copy of everything, the lease agreement, all the forms that were signed, the application, everything. So they have that file that they can access whenever they want. You can give them a thumb drive if you want. That's easier to lose, but they always get impressed when I give them a printed file folder with all the documents in it. They always say, my last agent didn't do that. And then you can staple your business card onto it so that they can contact you the next time. Any questions on any of this? Does it all make sense? Yeah, you guys are probably gonna forget most of this anyway. You learn when you actually go through it, right? doesn't matter how many times you go through this will all seem familiar when you're going through the transaction, but you're gonna learn more when you're actually going through it. And this is what, now that you accepted,
I have a question.
I'm sorry?
Hi, Carlos, I have a question for you.
Yes,
So in the real life, I got the landlord, I mean, the tenant for one of my listings.
yes,
He's gonna move, coming back what you were explaining, the moving time. He's gonna
Mhm.
move on the 1st, but I'm able to charge everything on the 15th, deposit on the 1st month, and then his next month will be on May.
what, wait, he's moving in on the 1st?
On the 1st, but this is the one that is fully furnished.
Yes.
And the landlord wants like have the whole pay on the 15th. Is even though he's gonna move on the 1st, can I collect everything together?
If the tenant's okay with it, but I would collect the deposit to hold it for them and then have them pay the first month's rent on the 1st, because I mean, that's not fair, right?
But the tenant, I spoke with him and he says that he's okay to give a full check already for everything.
If they're okay with it,
Go ahead.
yeah, if they're okay with it, that should be fine if everybody agrees to it.
Okay, and then in the other hand, when you put it on the MLS, it's better to put it as a pending or just hold.
That's a good question. I like that question because, so speaking to Rich, and this was like years ago when I had a lease listing that they weren't moving into, and I asked them, at what point should I mark this as closed? He's like, you have a executed lease agreement? Yes, then it's closed. Right? But what happens if somewhere between the move-in date, because, let's say if there's a month between the move-in date, something happens and they're not able to move in, then I have to upload that listing all over again, get a whole new lease listing agreement, because you can't just create a new listing without having a new listing agreement, right? And I think that's a mistake that a lot of agents make, is that they think, oh yeah, my listing agreement is still good until June, so I can just enter it again to the MLS. You can't. You need a new, every time you enter a new listing into the MLS, you have to have a new listing agreement every time. So my recommendation is, just like I did with mine, is I set it as pending. And then once they move in and I collect the first month's rent, deliver the keys, I'm gonna mark it as closed. Just so I won't, just to protect myself too, that I don't have to re-enter everything and get a whole new listing agreement.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the best way.
But if you put it in pending, and they pay you, let's say on the 15th, when do I put it sold? On the 1st or on when I receive the money?
I think I would do it when you get the money,
Oh, okay.
get all of the money.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
In my case, I'm not gonna get the first month until April 1st, so that's when I'm gonna mark it as closed. But you're gonna get all on the 15th, and everything's signed and they're giving you all the money, the 15th should be okay.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So this is it. So once you accept, you're representing the landlord, right? You already uploaded your lease listing agreement to SkySlope. There's gonna be a section where it asks you, there's a button that says accepted offer. And once you click on that accepted offer button, it's gonna ask you, who's the tenant? How much did it lease for? When does the lease begin? Who's the other agent? And a few questions, and then it's gonna take you to this checklist. And this is the checklist. Again, everything that has the little asterisk next to it is if applicable, but everything else is required. And as you can see here, the first required one is the application rent screening fee. You already have the application because they submitted that to you. So boom, you can just upload that. If you go down to the last one, it says tenant credit report. Well, you have that because they submitted that to you as well, right? Any other documentation that go with the application, like the bank statements and pay stubs, you can upload along with the application under the application to rent line item. And then copy of checks when they give you the first month's rent and the deposit. Scan them, make a copy of them, you're gonna upload a copy of that on there. And then everything else that's required, the move and inspection. So just so you can see what's required. Because sometimes agents won't even look at this, they'll just accept whatever the other agent's sending. It's like, no, we need this stuff. If they don't provide this, then ask them for it, right? Again, it's only, there's some of them that are applicable. Let's see, like the first one, animal terms and conditions. If there's a pet, you're gonna need that form. Let's see, lead-based paint, if it was built pre-1978, you're gonna need that form. Let's see. The agency disclosure, the disclosure of agency relationship, the fourth one on the list. If the lease is gonna be more than 12 months, then that's required. But it's only if applicable. Key safe lockbox addendum, that's only if the landlord. I see some people use this, some people don't use it. That's typically if the landlord wants to give the tenant a notice that at the end of their lease, if they don't renew, that they can show the property to other potential tenants after that year's up, like prior to the lease being up. And that they can install a lockbox on it. With sufficient notice, right? 24 or 48 hour notice. Let's see, lease rental commission agreement. That form is, it's typically when the tenant side is submitting their application and they're asking the landlord to pay for their commission. That's when you're gonna submit that. You're gonna, on the tenant side, you're gonna submit that along with your application. But we'll talk about that on the tenant side. Right now, we went to the listing side. And, but I just wanted to show you guys what the checklist looks like. Any questions on this? All right, so let's move on. Now we're going to the representing tenant side. So when you're representing a tenant, you're gonna have the consultation, whether it's a phone call or in person, you ask them what they're looking for, how many occupants, how many adults, right? Because you're gonna need an application for everybody that's over 18. You don't necessarily need a credit report for everyone over 18, because there might be parents and an 18-year-old that's in school and their income's not gonna go towards the rent. So all you need is an application for that 18-year-old, but you need credit reports for the parents. So, where are they looking? What city, beds, baths, all that stuff that they're looking for, right? You're gonna email them the rent-free application, again, for the adults, for everybody over 18. And again, not everybody's gonna need a credit report, and you guys can figure out who's gonna need it and who's not, right? You're gonna request the supporting documentation. And again, typically, last 2 pay stubs, last 2 bank statements for every adult. And it's important just to have that handy. And then you're gonna have them sign the tenant representation or broker compensation agreement. Because someone's gotta pay you, right? You're not working for free. This form is saying that the tenant's gonna pay you, and the contract, there's a contract right there. The contract cannot be more than 3 months. So, let's see here, actually. This one doesn't have the 3-month limit, like the buyer broker agreement does. Anyway, you have to have a beginning date and ending date for it. I'm representing the tenant between this date and this date to help them find property. And at the bottom here in D1, it says you're gonna check the box and type in like let's say 3% of a fixed year's term lease. So again, for 12 months. And something you can tell the tenant when you're talking to them is, hey, we can see if the landlord is willing to pay for the commission. We're gonna submit along with the application, the lease rental commission agreement, asking them to pay for it. But if they say no, that means you have to pay me the commission. If you don't have this filled out and you submit your application only with the lease commission agreement, lease rental commission agreement, asking the landlord to pay for it, what if they say no? Who's gonna pay you if you don't have this filled out? They're gonna say, you know what, we don't wanna pay you, but we're willing to accept your tenant. Then what? Then you just introduced your girlfriend to your best looking buddy, and then she just went with him. And you're just standing there like, okay, now what? I don't know, I mean,
That's not the correct.
it's not a correct, but it's just, you know,
not
that's, yeah, it's not the best analogy, but that's pretty much what happens, you know, they can move forward without you, I guess, right? You know, there's no agreement with them. So, I don't know, did that make sense to you guys out there on Zoom? Because that's kind of how it feels, I think that's how it would feel. All right, let's move on. So you're gonna email them a list of available homes that meet the criteria from the MLS, and this is what it would look like. Schedule selected showing, so maybe they wanna see one, or maybe you're gonna say, hey, there's a list of properties that I wanna show you. So you either show them the properties they wanna see, or you say, hey, I narrowed it down to a list of 5 properties I wanna show you, show them those listings. And make sure that when you show, you adhere to the showing instructions, because that's a potential fine if someone turns you in for not adhering to the showing instructions. You have to make sure that you follow the instructions. It could be whether scheduled be a showing time. If they say text to the agent, don't just show up to the property. Oh, I'm in the neighborhood and this is for lease. I'm just gonna open the lockbox and show my client because I'm in the neighborhood. You can't do that, right? Make sure that you adhere to the showing instructions. You're gonna submit your application supporting documentation, so the listing agent include the lease commission agreement, we talked about that. The MLS listing will have instructions on what to do, what documents are required. Strategies to make your tenant stand out, so let's say they're getting a bunch of applications, and everybody has, you know, 700 above credit, they all make pretty good money, they're all pretty good applicants. What's gonna make your tenant stand out? Well, you can offer above asking price. If they're asking 5,000 a month, offer 5,200, 5,100, 5,200 a month. Because someone else is probably not doing that, right? Now it shows that you really want the property. Another thing you can do is offer 6 months to a year upfront. Because other applicants are probably not doing that, but it makes your client look more appealing, right? So I have someone that with the exact same credentials, but one of them wants to pay 6 months up front. I might want to pick that person. Or I have 2 exact applicants, but one of them wants to pay me more money per month. Wonder what I'm gonna do. Any questions on this? Okay. So this is what the lease rental commission agreement looks like. And this is pretty much saying, you're gonna check the box where it says housing provider up at the top here on the left. Agrees to pay Coldwell Banker Platinum Properties. But you have to make sure that you know the housing provider's name. Or, I mean, you have the property address up there. When you send it in, I guess the listing agent can fill that out, but it would be important to have that filled out. I would definitely have it filled out. And under compensation equal to, right above the number 1, compensation equal to, you're gonna write in 3% of first year's term. Or $1,000 if you want to just keep it flat, or 2.5% of first year's term. And then you're gonna have your tenant sign it at the bottom, and then you're gonna sign it all the way at the bottom, and you're gonna submit this along with your application packet. Okay. So I don't think I talked about it on the tenant side, but we talked about this earlier, that you're gonna go to Rent Spree to create the application link to send it to your tenant, for them to fill it out, pay the $40 for their credit report, and then you're gonna submit that on their behalf. I'm gonna show you guys again at the end what that looks like. So acceptance, the listing agent will drop the lease agreement and send it over with additional disclosure. We talked about that from the listing side, right? Now you're on the tenant side. Now you wait for the listing agent to send you the lease sorry, to send you the lease agreement with all the terms that you guys agree to. Review it before you have your client sign it. Make sure that everything is as agreed to, because sometimes they'll accidentally, maybe they had a lease agreement with somebody else and they had different terms, but they just typed over it and left some of the things that were there before, which some agents do, you know. So make sure that everything is as agreed to. The terms, the price, what's included, what's covered, is there a gardener, is there a refrigerator, washer, that they're willing to maintain, things like that. So just make sure you go through it before you have your client sign it. And then you have the tenant sign all the lease documents. So money. First month's rent, security deposit, cashier's check or electronic transfer. So sometimes it's up to the landlord how they want the money. Maybe they just want it wired over to them, or they want to accept a cashier's check. So it may be 1, 2, or 3 checks or electronic transfer. And in the example of the 1, 2, or 3 checks, it could be 1 check for the commission for the listing broker. The rest is going to be the first month's security deposit. Wait, let me explain this further. So let me use the example that I'm from my lease listing right now. So the security deposit is 1 check. They actually wired the money over to the owner. And then the first month's rent is where I'm going to take the commission out of, per the contract. And in the lease agreement, it states that so much money is going to go towards the commission, and then the rest of it for the first month is going to go to the landlord. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to have the tenant give us a cashier's check for the commission agreement made out to Coldwell Banker Platinum Properties out of the first month's rent. So my example, the first month's rent is $8,000. So out of the $8,000, they're going to write an amount towards my commission, and then the remainder of it is going to be wired to the landlord. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay. And if there's going to be commission made out to multiple brokerages, then you're going to have 1 check for 1 brokerage, another check for another brokerage, and then the rest of it is going to go to the landlord for the first month's rent. Or if the landlord demands it, they get all the money, and then the landlord sends you a check for your commission to the brokerage. There's a few ways of doing it. It's better to get your check up front though. Any questions on that? Okay. Yeah, I gotta fix this. It's better to.
I have a
go-
question, Carlos.
Yes,
Okay, so let's say there's an agent that is listing the rental, but then I find the tenant and I, execute the lease. How is the commission handled? Are we splitting that or? Because
no, so remember, you have to submit is the landlord paying your commission or is the tenant paying your commission?
so who would determine that in the listing, or is that negotiated?
Well, you're gonna have a tenant representation agreement, and
Okay,
where they're going to pay you a commission. I wouldn't show anybody property without having that signed.
I get it. Okay,
So
thank
that's
you.
the first thing you have. And
Okay.
then if they want you to ask the landlord to pay for a commission, then you're gonna include the lease rental commission agreement along with your application. This one that I just showed you guys
Uh-huh.
back. Oh, yeah, this one, asking the landlord to pay for your commission. Okay, and if the landlord agrees to pay the entire commission that your tenant agreed to, then your tenant doesn't owe you anything. Now the landlord's gonna pay you.
Okay,
But if the landlord says no, then you have to get paid by your tenant.
so is this the most common route that you've seen, where it's just the commission agreement this way, where it says that the landlord will pay, but if they don't, then the tenant will pay?
Yeah, but in most cases, I'm seeing that the landlords are agreeing to pay for it because that's what they're used to,
Okay,
in most
Yeah.
cases I've seen.
okay,
There's some cases where they'll say, no, we're not gonna pay, and then the tenant, and the agent come to an agreement and say, hey, you don't have to pay me 3%, pay me 2%, right?
okay. Yes, got it. Thanks.
Or just pay me the full 3% since you agreed to in the first place.
Okay.
Hey, Carlos, regarding to what Rania says, when you sell yourself as a listing agent and they ask you what your services are. So we offer that we're gonna look for the future tenant. We run the background like we do with rent spring and everything and do the paperwork. But so he doesn't want to pay the other side. So how it was for this client, I wasn't able to tell the tenant that I did in the open house because I am serving the listing side, and the new tenant came into the open house, so he's not agreed to pay either.
Okay, so there's on the listing agreement, lease listing agreement, I believe on the back side of that, or sorry, I want to say second page of that. Don't quote me on this, but I think there's a section where it says if the tenant is not represented, then the landlord agrees to pay listing agent another, you can enter amount %.
Ah,
So you can check that box and then enter that amount there. So that way you get a commission to represent the landlord, but then you also get commission representing a tenant that is not represented by an agent. I believe,
yeah, and I got it in the first one. The landlord didn't. They said that they're gonna pay anything. They say just we pay you only for listing service.
okay, well, here's another way you can go around that. You can ask for 4% or 5% upfront for your service, right? For the listing. And then when someone submits an application, let's say it's another agent, you could share your commission with that other agent if you want to. Instead of asking the landlord to pay another commission, you're already getting 5%. You can give the buyer side or the tenant side 2% of that 5% or 2.5%.
Mm-hmm.
There's no specific number, but you don't have to. So when the agent calls you and says, "Hey, are you willing to offer commission?" Yeah, we're paying 2%.
Okay.
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 So then you can do that, and then you can. It wouldn't be the lease rental commission agreement because it's not between them and the landlord. It would be maybe some kind of addendum between you and them. So I gotta figure out how we can structure that, but yeah. So
Yeah,
that's
because in the real life with this guy and with this landlord, say, well, we're just going to pay you for the service that you're gonna give me. I give you the list. Say okay, and you're gonna screen in my people. Say yeah, I made them go to the screen and they do the application. They pay the application, and do you write the list agreement? I mean the month to month. You say okay, we do that. But they don't want to pay extra money at all, so I didn't put it on. Actually, they
well,
made
so here's the thing. You're pretty much you're pretty much doing all the work already anyway, right?
for
So
yeah, both
in
were
that case though, in that situation, I would say, fine, we agree to you pay me 3%. The tenant doesn't have an agent and they're not willing to pay a commission. So on the lease agreement, you're gonna go ahead and do all the paperwork on it, like you would normally do anyway. And just put that you're representing the landlord, but nobody's representing the tenant. So that way, they can't say that you didn't represent them, in the best way or whatever, because hey, you're not their agent. You're gonna send them a lease agreement, they're gonna review it, they're gonna sign it, and they're gonna send it back to you. You don't have to, review it with them since you're not representing them, right? Since they don't wanna pay for representation, you're not representing them, so you're still gonna do the paperwork, email it to them to sign, and collect the money like you would normally do. So you're not doing anything extra, you're not going out and showing them properties, right?
no, I got it on the open house anyway. That guy.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not like a big loss. If you can get them to pay a commission, cool. If you can't, then it's not, like I said, it's not a big deal. You're already getting paid, you're
Yeah,
representing.
I just got the listing size in this
Yeah.
transaction.
Yeah, but just on the lease agreement,
Uh-huh.
don't enter your name under representing the tenant. Just leave that blank.
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
Good.
because you're not representing the tenant. There's no relationship between you and the tenant as far as agency. So you're
Oh,
representing
okay,
the landlord, and
that's
that's,
good.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then even where it asks for the signature for the tenant's agent, leave that blank, they have no agent.
Oh, okay, that's a good thing. Thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome. Then you're gonna deliver the keys to the tenant, explain the keys, remotes, passcodes, things like that. For some, it might be a little more involved. You might have a key for the front door, you might have a key for the pool, HOA pool, you might have a key for the mailbox, you might have the remote for the garage, you might have a remote for the gate, all these different things. So make sure that the listing agent explains to you, to your client, where everything goes, right, what everything's for. I remember MJ had like 3 keychains of like 100 keys, and then from the previous tenant, and then she was left to sort out what was what. So make sure that you guys explain to the tenant what the keys are for, or have the listing agent do that. Let's see, have the tenant fill out the move-in form. So what you can do is when you deliver the keys and you meet with the client of the property, or you meet with the agent, the listing agent, to deliver the keys. Make sure you leave the move-in form with them so they can fill it out when they're going through the property, and tell them, hey, we need this back in a week by a week. So if you can get it to me as soon as possible, that'd be great. And again, that's just to make sure that, you know, they document what condition the property's in. But you as the agent should also take pictures of the property. Right? So you can document what the property's condition was in. It's very important. Then you want to give the tenant a copy of the transaction file, copy of the lease agreement, everything they signed. Again, they're going to be so happy because they don't have to do it. They don't have to print everything out. So make sure to save or take your business card onto it. Then you get to upload everything to SkySlope. So if you're on the tenant side, you still have to upload everything, right? Doesn't matter which side you're on, the listing side or the tenant side, you still have to upload everything. And make sure you give the commission check to John. And the commission check should be made up to Golden Rank Platinum Properties. John will then take their portion and write you a commission check. All right, and then finally, when you get the move-in inspection form, make sure you send it back to the listing agent to get the landlord to sign and acknowledge it, and then you get that back completely signed, fully executed, and you upload it to SkySlope. And again, this is what the lease transaction checklist looks like. It's the same thing. Some housekeeping stuff. Pet versus emotional support or animal service dog, or sorry, or service animal. You can't charge a pet deposit for service animal. They're not considered a pet. You can't say no to somebody with a service animal because they have a service animal. There's a lot of landlords that don't understand that. They'll say, they have a pet, I can't let them in. It's not a pet, it's a service animal or emotional support dog or whatever they have certificate for. You can't say no because of that. Right? And then so also, going back to the deposit, if you can only charge 1 month deposit, you can't, if the tenant comes in with the dog, you can't charge an additional pet deposit on top of that deposit. The most you can charge is one month's deposit for the people that are not exempt from the Tenant Protection Act. Or if you're exempt, no more than 2 months. So if you charge 2 months, you can't ask for more money because they have a pet. So make sure that you don't ask for more money. That's not legal. Discrimination, don't discriminate. I don't care if you're white, green, yellow, orange, purple, green. Again, don't discriminate on color. Don't discriminate on age, race, sex, gender, disability, religion, marital status, if you're a Kansas City Chiefs fan, etc. It's a football team I don't like. But I'm not gonna discriminate because of it. If you're a Kansas City Chiefs fan, it's okay, I'll give you a fair shot. It's not my call, but you can't discriminate. You can, let's see, don't discriminate even if they have Section 8 housing. And a lot of people always ask, what is Section 8 housing? Because you get calls from, like leads from people that say, oh, hey, I'm Section 8 housing and, you know, I'm trying to find a place, but it's hard. So for those that want to know what Section 8 housing is it's a housing choice voucher program. Let's see, it's a federal government major program for assisting very low income families, the elderly, and the disabled to afford decent, safe, and sanitary housing in the private market. Since housing assistance is provided on behalf of the family or individual, participants are able to find their own housing, including single-family homes, townhomes, and apartments. A housing subsidy is paid to the landlord directly by the PHA, which stands for, I don't have that in here, on behalf of the participating family. The family then pays the difference between the actual rent charged and the landlord, by the landlord, and the amount subsidized by the program under certain circumstances. If authorized by the PHA, the family may use its voucher to purchase a modest home. So it's something the housing authority. So what this is it's a subsidized government program that'll pay for a portion of the rent. Usually it's a big portion of the rent. And then let's say it's a $4,000 a month rental. Each family is going to qualify for up to this much rent is what they're going to approve you for, right, for that voucher. And they might pay $3,000 out of the $4,000, or they might pay $3,800, and all the tenant has to pay is $200 a month. So for some landlords, this is like a guaranteed paycheck every month because the government's going to pay. So some of them will accept it, but but you have to go through the process where they have to approve you to accept the Section 8 housing. But there's some landlords that don't want them. But you can't say we don't accept Section 8. That's not legal. So if someone calls, you represent a landlord, and they ask, do you accept Section 8 housing? Say, we accept all applicants. We don't accept applicants. We're willing to entertain all applications, and go ahead and submit your application. We're going to present all applications. Okay. So SkySlope is a transaction management program. Again, I'm going to show you guys what that looks like. Red Spring, this is a tenant screening website. I'm going to show you what that looks like. And then Zillow. Zillow is we're going to use the Zillow rental manager portion of it. So let's see here. Let me go at this. And I've opened the websites. Show you guys what that looks like. Get this out of the way. Okay. The MLS. I was going to show you guys how to add a listing into the MLS. Once you're in the MLS, you're going to click on Add Edit. And for a lease, you're going to click on Add New. What type of listing? This is a residential lease. Then you're going to click on Residential Lease. And then it's going to take you to, let me give you an example of what it looks like on my listing here. So it's going to ask you to fill all this stuff out. So basic information on the property, description of the property, you have to enter a description. There's certain things you can't say, like walking distance, because that discriminates against people that can't walk. You can't say great family neighborhood, because then you discriminate against single people. You can't say, I don't know, there's certain things you can't say. So be careful what you write in here. And it'll also tell you when you type it in and submit it, it'll warn you, hey, there's some words in here that we don't like, so change them. And then you have to figure out which words they are, because it's not going to tell you. Let's see. And then features, you got to go through and check mark features, right? So again, this takes some time to go through this to add the listing to the MLS. And then more information. Anyway, so this is what it looks like. This is how you add a listing. And then when you're ready, at the bottom, you click on submit listing. And then it goes live. Easy, right? Except for all the things you have to answer and fill out. Okay, that's how you add a listing to the MLS. Now, let's go to SkySlope. SkySlope is where you're going to upload all of the signed contracts for the broker to have a copy of. Let's see. Mine looks a little bit different than what yours looks like, because I have admin rights. But what you're going to do when you have a listing is you're going to, there's down here on the bottom, you're going to see something that says create or something. And then let me show you what what that's going to look like. Jesus, lock me out. Oh. Okay, create a listing. But yours is gonna be on the first page. And then when you create a listing, it's gonna ask you, what's the property, it's a listing, and then you're not gonna have this because, again, this is admin, it's already gonna know it's you. It's gonna ask you for the address, it's gonna ask you for a bunch of information on the listing. And then it'll bring you to the checklist where you have to upload the copy of the lease listing agreement. If you're representing the tenant, then you're gonna click on create a transaction. In my case, I have to click here first. You're gonna create a transaction. And representation type, it's a lease, so lease tenant. And then you're gonna enter the address. And it's gonna ask you some questions, it's gonna ask you, how much did it lease for? When's the move-in date? When's the acceptance date? What's the MLS number? And then what's the landlord's name? What's the landlord's agent's name? What's the tenant's name? How much commission are you getting on this? And then you're gonna go to the next screen, and then it's gonna give you the big checklist I showed you guys. So this is what SkySoap looks like. Again, it's gonna look a little bit different when you log in, because I have admin rights, that's why it's shown like this. But this is, again, where you're going to upload a copy of every form for us to have a copy, for the brokerage to have a copy of. And then what happens is, then I go through this every day and pretty much audit it. I go through and make sure you have the right forms, you have the signatures. And so if you upload the wrong form or you're missing signatures, I'm gonna reject that form and say, write a note saying, hey, you're missing the seller's signature or landlord's signature on page 3. Please get that. So then, and then I tell it to update you. So it sends you an update with what notes I entered in there. So that way you know what you have to do. But please upload these as you get them, because if you wait until the transaction closes to upload everything, and then everyone went their own ways, and you're missing something, it's hard to get those forms signed. It's hard for you to go to the other agent and say, hey, can you get your client to sign this because we missed it? They were like, no, we're done. I'm not gonna ask them to sign anything, we're done. So upload as you go, because I go through these every day, and if you're missing something, you're gonna know, right?
Carlos, another
Yes.
question. Sorry, can you go back to the Zipforms what you were looking at? And I came in with the
I
form.
didn't have Zipforms open.
Oh, you don't have Zipform, because I came out with a form that says TRPR. It says offer of tenant positive rental payment reporting. What is that? I never seen it before.
That's if the tenant would like the landlord to report to the credit bureaus the good standing and rent, or the landlord offering to pay to do that, but there's a fee involved, so a lot of landlords don't want to do that.
What? Because it came in as part of the when I
Yeah, it's
did-
part of the lease agreement, yeah, so you just don't check mark that that the landlord is going to participate.
because I was doing the rent cap and it pops out that one, and I never seen it before.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean they have to agree to that. They could just sign it but not agree or agree that they're not going to do that.
Should I add it up or not?
Should you what?
Do I need to add it up or not?
No, it's automatically part of it. You still need to have them sign it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's part of the lease agreement, so you have to have them sign it.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that that the landlord has to report everything. There's a section, I'm not sure, that says that they're not going to report it. I'd have to look at it, but anyway, let me move on here to this, because we're running out of time here. I think we're way past it. So I wanted to show you guys, and then rent spree, this is what rent spree looks like when you first log in. You have to create an account, right? And then you can click on start screening request. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna type in a property address. Let's say in this case, this is a property. Go to next. And then pretty simple, right? You're gonna send the application, which includes the renter application right here. And sorry, it's the applicant. Not to myself, applicants, which is already defaulted. You're gonna send the rental application. And then by default, it's gonna have these check marks for the credit report. And the credit report is $39.99, which includes the credit report, the eviction history, and criminal background. And if you want, for an additional fee, you can include income verification. This takes a little bit longer because they have to call and to verify, but I mean, usually you just send them the $39.99 one. So with just these selected, you're gonna go to next, right? But if you're going to send these two to the parents, and then you're gonna send another one to the 18-year-old child, you're gonna send this separately to the parents, including the credit report. And then let me show you what that looks like. We're gonna go next. And you're gonna send it to mom, dad, their email address, right? And then you're gonna hit send. Mom and dad are gonna receive that, and then they're gonna log in and apply. And then you're gonna go back, and then for the 18-year-old, you're gonna uncheck credit. We don't wanna send them the credit report. All they're gonna get is the application. And then you're gonna click on next. Type in the child or son or daughter, whatever, son, their email address, and hit send. And now they're gonna get that request. Everyone has to create their own login for Rent Spree. But then once they log in, they create their login, it allows them to fill out the application and submit. And then you get notified as the agent that sent them the request that their application is complete. So it's pretty easy, right? You can either send it via email or you can send it via text. So if you want to send it via text, they want to do it on their phone, so type in the phone number and hit send. They get the text message, click on the link and do the same thing. Most people use email. And then remember that flyer that I showed you guys where it has the QR code? You can click down here where it says print application flyers. And then shows you this is what it looks like. And I can click on print. And then it created the application flyer. So now when you scan that QR code, it takes you to Rent Spree to create your own account and then fill out the application. And because it's my personal link for that particular listing, it's gonna attach it to that listing within Rent Spree. And then let me show you what that looks like here. And then I'm gonna have a list of people that have applied, and it's gonna tell me if it's completed, submitted, or in progress, and so forth. And there you go, and then you download them. You click on the actual applicant, and then it shows you the forms, and I don't wanna show you guys because that's personal information. And then you can download the application, the credit report, and so forth. And I think the credit report is only good for 1 month. So after that month, if you're working with a tenant, they might have to, redo their credit report, because I don't think it's gonna be available. And sometimes, landlords don't want a credit report that's 2 months old. They want something that's more recent. So some of them are a little more relaxed and they'll accept it, but in most cases they won't. So that's Rent Spree. All these different websites that I always talk about, but I want to show you guys what it looks like, right? And then Zillow Rental Manager. So when you go to Zillow, you're going to create an account as an agent. What I like to do, because for some reason it doesn't work for me when I just go to Zillow.com and log in. I go to Google and I type in Zillow Rental Manager and search, and then it's the first link that comes up, and I just click on that one, it takes me straight there. And then I'm already logged in, so then I go to Manage Rentals, and I go to My Listings. And it's going to show my listings here, or any listings that I've had on Zillow before. Right now they're all off market because they're all leased. But like, let's say I want to go into this old one here. It'll show you messages between you and potential tenants that you've gone back and forth through. So let's go back. Let's go to messages. Searching for messages, I think because there's not any active ones, it's not going to show, but it'll show you on the left here who sent the message. In the middle, it'll show you the actual message, and then on the right, it'll show you their credit score, their phone number, a few details, and then you click on the next one, and it'll show you their message, and again their information, and then you can respond back and forth like a messaging app. But you can also download the app on your phone and do the same thing. So as soon as someone inquires about something, you can text them from there or call them back. But anyway, this is how you would go through and handle your leads that you're getting through Zillow for your lease listing. Any questions?
Yes, how do we share the applications with the landlord? How does that look like?
Well, you're gonna download the PDF from Rentspree. And once you download the application from Rentspree as a PDF, it's gonna include the application and the credit report and those other documents that reports. But you also have to collect the pay stubs and bank statements from the tenants. And I would submit everything together.
Okay,
Does that answer
okay.
your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So anyway, any more questions? No? Okay. So next week, we're gonna have a class on escrow. So we have our escrow officer that's gonna come on, tell you guys what the escrow process looks like. You guys don't ever have to deal with like directly with the escrow process itself, but it's good to know what escrow does and how it interacts with your transaction, because your transaction is an escrow, right? And they're the ones, the neutral third party that's handling everything. So yeah, she'll be out here next Thursday and explain the escrow process. So if you have any questions about escrow and maybe something that your clients are wondering, make sure you bring those questions next week. So anyway,
Carlos,
yes.
thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I still have my lot boxes for sale.
Yeah,
Okay, I think Zach's gonna reach out to you.
I'll reach
Okay.
out.
Alrighty. A real
Alright.
steal.
Yeah, it is.
Good job, Carlos. Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
All right, see you guys next week.
Bye, thanks.
Hey, Carlos, what time I can talk to you to?
Well, let's talk outside of this. Let me cancel.
Okay.
close this out.